Hey everybody, how's it going? I hope you're having a fantastic Easter weekend. I have quite a rare trumpet to show you today, but first I wanted to say thank you so much for listening to all of my music on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Amazon Music, everywhere you find music. Currently, I am up to 400 monthly listeners, which is so exciting. 400 people go out of their way to listen to my music every single month. I really appreciate that. So yeah, make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow me on Spotify, anywhere you find your music, and you can also find me at soulorchid.com. Today, I have an extremely rare, not valuable, but an extremely rare trumpet to show you all today. This is the Golden Gate Trumpet. And I know what you're thinking, with a name like the Golden Gate Trumpet, it sounds like something that someone would commission Jimbal to make overseas, and then they just sort of ship a bunch in and then stick their name on it. But no, this is an American-made trumpet called the Golden Gate Trumpet, made right here in California. So let's get into it. So first off, just a general overview of the horn here. You could pause as I go so you could take a look at some of the features here. But those of you all that have a pretty good eye here, you could tell that Kanstul made this horn. This is a Kanstul-built horn for Union Music here in San Francisco. Golden Gate Trumpets. So before we get into the backstory on this horn, because there's a pretty interesting backstory, let's take a look at the specs, because we're here for the specs. This is an all yellow brass trumpet with a .460 medium large bore, a 4 7/8 inch bell, which is pretty big, almost a 5-inch bell on essentially a student horn, which is pretty cool. Bell flare isn't too crazy though, kind of a standard flare. You have a first valve slide hook. And even though this looks fabricated, this little sort of reach over sort of portion, it actually came from the factory like that. You also have Monel valves, however you pronounce it, Monel. But every Kanstul uses these valves. These valves are great. They have brass valve guides, which is very nice. You also have a third valve slide ring. You have 2 water keys, and you have a nice third valve slide stop rod that doubles as a screw. If you've played some other Kanstuls, you might have seen this before. Sorry, I'm trying to get it on camera. It's a screw that doubles as a stop rod. Although normally this sort of comes through a bracing here on other horns like Yamaha's, but this one has its own little fixture right here, and it goes right down there to stop the third slide. So let's get into the backstory on this guy, and let's start with the bell. So the bell right there, you have Golden Gate Trumpets, Union Music Company, 1475 Bush Street, San Francisco, California, zip code USA. A little bit about San Francisco and Union Music. If you've ever been to San Francisco and you sort of look up music stores in the area here, Union Music has been sort of the main local retailer for everything band and orchestra for a very long time. Even today, if you go to unionmusic.com, they have a whole list of horns that they have on consignment. You can visit them today, although they are not at this old address on the bell. They are actually down on Market Street. And again, it's still one of the major music retailers here in the city. Well, back in the 90s, while they were renting out Bach's and Yamaha's and all these other horns, Union Music seemed to have this idea that, hey, why should we pay for Bach's and Yamaha's to rent out when we could, ring our friends down at Kanstul, about 5 hours south of the city, down in Anaheim, and get them to make a line of trumpets just for us. And when you think about it, it really makes sense. You could get Bach's and Yamaha's and Kahns and Kings, but within the state, there was Kanstul right down south there making all of these horns, making a lot of custom builds that could just build you a stencil horn right here. You would have all the parts locally, you could service them right there, and you could control the whole process. Not to mention the free advertising of having your business and the address on the bell of your horn. Again, this is back in the 90s, so Bach is all the way in Elkhart, UMI is all the way in Eastlake, Ohio, I believe at this point. You have Yamaha, which is just about all overseas at this point. Meanwhile, Kanstul is a 5-hour drive, or it's a 45-minute flight. It's just kind of a no-brainer. So the Golden Gate Trumpet was made by Kanstul and then sold up at Union Music, just up the state, up the coast. And just visually here, you could probably tell, but the Golden Gate Trumpet is a Kanstul 610 student trumpet. I say student sort of in, quotes, because just about everything Kanstul made was made to the same quality. For example, in my previous video, we talked about my Kanstul handcraft right here, my amazing hand-built Kanstul horn that was based off the old Martin committees. You take a look at that valve block right there, and then take a look at the Golden Gate Trumpet valve block. They are the same. Of course, the top caps are different, but the actual block itself, it's the same. Whether you have a, $5,000-$6,000 custom-made horn or their student horn, a lot of the same components went into it. So just some key differences here between this Golden Gate Trumpet and the 610 Kanstul student horn. First off, the Kanstul 610 had nickel outer slides here, outer tubes in some specific spots here on the horn. The Kanstul 610 also had sort of Olds Ambassador inspired water keys, where these water keys were actually flipped upside down and sat horizontally, and you would press them from the bottom. This one just features standard water keys, levers up top. The Kanstul 610 also had clear lacquer as a finish, and the Golden Gate Trumpet does have a special finish that is gold to sort of match the Golden Gate sort of, motif there. If you take a look, the entire horn is gold lacquer. I'm talking the bottom caps are gold lacquer, the third valve slide ring and screw are both gold lacquer, the water keys have gold lacquer on them. The top caps are gold lacquer. The stems are gold lacquer. Top caps are lacquer here. The buttons are lacquer. The first slide hook here is also gold lacquer. Kind of a, as you sort of look around the horn, you're like, oh my gosh, it's all yellow brass. And then you look around a little bit more and you're like, oh my goodness, this entire thing is golden. So we could spend all day talking about how this horn looks, but how does it play? First off, first impressions, has a really nice core to the sound. The tone is pretty trumpety. It almost has that sort of brassy edge that you get. I kind of equate it to like when you spin a quarter and the quarter is kind of sputtering out a little bit and it's about to fall. Has sort of that metallic rumbling sound. This horn gets a lot of that. I will say, not super free blowing. However, I think that is a good thing as a student horn. I don't necessarily want to give my students just a wide open tube. They need to find some control. They need to sort of, learn to dance with the horn. And I feel like with a little bit of resistance here, it really does help out students. Now to the action on the horn, the slides are extremely tight fitted. I will say I've worked these slides a ton. It's been professionally cleaned. But this horn is just built to last. We don't have any loose tolerances here. Everything is super tight. Even the valves, while they might stick a little bit, they are just tanks. I put some Hetman 2 on them, and every once in a while you have a little bit of a sticky valve, but they're just very heavy, they're very springy. However, they are never going to stick. You are never gonna have a stuck third valve slide. It's just built like a tank. Intonation is okay. It's fine. For some reason, the second valve seems a little bit out sometimes, just sort of through every partial feels just really low. But that just might be me. Maybe, I just shaved yesterday, so maybe my face is just being weird. When it comes to flexibility, it is not the most flexible horn in the world. It'll play those lip slurs, it'll jump around, but you gotta work for it. And, again, for students, I kind of like that. When you're learning where the notes are, where you're learning where the partials are, and you're just learning to, again, dance with the horn, I feel like you need to take the lead a little bit. You don't want really loose slots when you're trying to teach a student. You want a student to just lock into those pitches, lock into those partials, and work for where those partials are. So in that case, I feel like this is a very good student horn. However, it is a little inflexible at times. Now again, for a student in beginning band, this is perfect. For a student that keeps it through high school and uses this in marching band, it's perfect. Articulations are also pretty good too. I will say down low, I feel like I've had to articulate a little bit harder to get pitches to speak right away. So when it comes to the rarity on these horns, these were only sold in San Francisco. They were only sold for a certain amount of time. You could only get these at one music store in San Francisco. So they are pretty rare. They are out there. I do see them around the city. However, I've never seen one outside of San Francisco. If you do find one outside of San Francisco, it's a pretty cool piece. It's a neat little piece of Kanstul stenciling history. Plays pretty well. And it's kind of a beautiful, unique horn having an all yellow brass construction and that gold lacquer that I don't think Kanstul used on any other horn. Just a little bit of demo on this horn. You're going to hear my released single, Suspended. Again, normally I play flugelhorn on this song. My main recording has me playing my Edwards X19. Playing this one is a lot different. You're going to hear some chipped notes. You might hear a little bit of wonkiness with intonation, but I wanted to be authentic with this recording to give you an idea of how the tone is, how it blends with a modern production. So this was all about the Golden Gate Trumpet from San Francisco. Thank you all so much for watching.